After creating the signature sound of Mass Effect and leading the team on Mass Effect 2, Jack Wall decided to move on, leaving Sam Hulick and a new team of composers to shape the trilogy's conclusion.
I think it's healthy to do that after a period of time, because you want to keep it fresh and you want to keep it moving. And I'm really busy with these projects. I can't wait to talk to you about the next things I'm doing.
Previously, the music would go through Jack. You know, we'd write tunes and Jack would kind of get a chance to listen to it first. On Mass Effect 3, BioWare was kind of the music director, in a sense. So we would write tunes that were assigned to us, and BioWare would basically just be the direct end point of that feedback loop.
My name's Christopher Lennertz, and I'm a composer for film and TV and games. I got my first start in games on Medal of Honor. I had a really good relationship with Steve Schnurr, who's the head of music at EA. So when the opportunity on Mass Effect 2, in terms of some of the download music came up, they wanted something that was really sort of orchestral and dark in nature, and Steve knew I did that. And so he introduced me to Rob Blake, who was the audio director. On that, and Rob was also the audio director on Mass Effect 3.
Hi, I'm Sasha Dikijian.
I'm Chris Velasco. I've also worked on the God of War series, Clive Barker's Jericho, stuff like that.
When we got the call, was I mean, the pressure was on. You know, it was like immediately when we knew Mass Effect 3. I mean, luckily we were involved with the DLCs, which sort of told the company that we can do it. But now that we're working on 3, it was sort of like all eyes on us, and everybody was like, "Oh man, this better be good." You know, our agent was like, "You know, this better be good. you know, sit down and you work your ass off." I think one of the important things that we wanted to do is that I think most people agree that the first one was it had a really unique sound to it, so we kind of wanted to bring that back, maybe a bit more edgy, just because the story just lends itself to, you know, be a bit darker.
It was kind of a hybrid between 1 and 2, I think, with everything we kind of brought our style to it.
It's hard, you know, to comment on a franchise that's sort of established. You know, we got a lot of other composers, and you know, they have high expectations. Obviously, the company. I think the challenge for myself was that I said, okay, I'm not going to use a lot of virtual instruments, meaning in the computer. I wanted to use hardware, real old synth, to give that sort of evangelist sound. Chris is doing the orchestra side, I do the electronic stuff, I do all the engineering too, the mixing and everything.
Yeah, it just really works out. We complement each other's styles well. It's almost like these 6-7 years of working together kind of led up to that point to collaborate on Mass Effect 3.
We kind of had to shift gears, writing the music from more of an emotional standpoint. You know, with the stakes being higher and kind of being the end of the trilogy, we changed the style a bit. There's a lot of piano pieces, for example. There's some string pieces that are just kind of, they tug at your heartstrings. I actually just came off a project called Red Orchestra 2. It's World War II, and it's very heavy and depressing, so that actually kind of helped to have that experience scoring for such heavy material, and then segue into Mass Effect 3 with, you know, not quite as tragic as, well, I guess it's a galactic war, so it's pretty heavy as well.
It was kind of a fine line, I think, to walk, because the story is, this is the culmination of the trilogy, and it is pretty over-the-top dramatic. So there's a tendency to maybe go overboard with the music, and which I think is the wrong thing to do. It sort of lessens the impact if you're pounding people like, oh, it's sad, it's sad.
And it doesn't have to be always a huge choir, it can be just like a sad voice, that we put into the tracks here and there. Even though the third one is really, more dramatic and darker, and, I think we try to stay minimalist with the music.
One of the things that I know he brought me on for was he really wanted me to take the Krogan aspect of the game and the introduction of the main female character, and to me that was right up my alley, because it had some broad orchestral expansive scope, but it also had some really elegiac, touching, emotional moments, which is something I do a lot in film, and it's also something I did a lot in some of the more somber moments of Medal of Honor. I love writing music that has a bit of a tragic approach to it. And I was fortunate enough, about 2 years ago, I went to Spain for the Ubita Film Music Festival, and I ended up meeting Elizabeth Scott, who is a fantastic voice. If you don't know her name, you know her voice, because she was, all the female vocals in Passion of the Christ and Narnia. We ended up using Lisbeth to do the vocals for Eve's character, and that was the thing that made it so it would really grab on and sort of touch your heart and make you feel like this is bigger than just a game. And I think that real human approach, and taking someone who's got such a voice like Lisbeth does, that just sort of floats above, and and I just think that, to me, that was something that really brought the whole part to life. It's always interesting to try to figure out what otherworldly or futuristic or sci-fi means in terms of music, because oddly enough, ever since Star Wars, everyone sort of assumes that sci-fi means early 20th century classical orchestral music. And that's not necessarily the case. So there's always been this opportunity of trying to figure out what's next, what's sort of futuristic in terms of where music would be. One of the things that I felt like is that music never discounts what's come before it. So I don't think you would completely lose the orchestra. I think you would add to the orchestra. I had a programmer, Mike Patty, who was actually here in the studio as well, who's really fantastic, and between him and I, we came up with quite a few synth sounds. Some of them were morphed sounds that we got, and some of them were sort of programmed from scratch. What we wanted to do was really give it its own identity.
That particular track in that level, I think, works really well because, like you said, it represents what I personally take from Mass Effect 1 when I first played it. It's supposed to be dark, but not too crazy dark, more cool. And I think that arpeggio you hear in the beginning, it's sort of representing the Geth. The direction was for this to be more electronic, just to represent the Geth, and not to have it too much orchestral element. It really works really well in the game because there is different variations of that track. So what you hear on the soundtrack is actually an edit of, I believe, 2 pieces together. The ambient cues are my personal favorite to write, just because one thing I love about Mass Effect is the sort of like adventure RPG part where you just walk around, you discover stuff, or learn things about the story. And so I think these little moments are important to sort of keep the the energy and the vibe going on, but without sort of interrupting the player and saying, okay, here's the melody now.
Yeah, I think the ambient cues are more important for setting the tone and pushing the story than the action stuff, because you know you're in a fight. You don't need the music to tell you that, but the ambient stuff is really kind of sets the stage for the level you're in.
There's one level called the Sanctuary. The Sanctuary was supposed to be this haven where people, you know, sort of just live their lives. But it's you come in and it's this huge environment. It's really sort of cleanish, utopian. I think that's the word for it. You know, and it's really it's totally empty. Nobody knows what's going on. So that's like the perfect setup for like a great ambient cue. It's almost like a painter with a sound palette. What does fit to this? It's sort of cold, but it's empty, and it's empty. It's deserted, but it's utopian. So it's supposed to be nice, and so it can't be too evil. It's not a cave, you know what I mean? So you start playing around with sounds, and you just trying different things, and then you come to some point where you just watch the video and you play whatever you have, and suddenly it works.
We get these visuals of scenes that we're scoring, and you take that in, and Mars, for example, on Mass Effect 3 is a very kind of, you know, it's sandy, it's red, it's a gritty environment, and almost like an alien sort of sound, and that's why I chose more of a synth approach with orchestral elements mixed into it. I usually lean towards orchestral elements for more organic settings.
I still really like the Reaper chase cue. It's just big and epic, and it's got that Mass Effect sound, but just like totally overblown. But man, when you're playing that level, you know, being chased by a Reaper, it was a really cool moment. I was glad that they let us score that one.
I love to tell big stories that can't just be told in one part. I love that approach, and I think one of the things that I love so much about video games and Mass Effect in particular is the ability to go along for part of that ride. And I think people who are gamers today don't look at it any different than I looked at Star Wars when I was young. For me to be able to provide the music for that is, you know, I mean, it's a dream come true.
Obviously, it's been a huge privilege and honor to have worked on one of the biggest series in gaming history, and it feels like it's a great experience having come full circle from Mass Effect 1. It's something that has been a big part of my life for the past few years, and so to see it end is kind of sad, but at the same time, very satisfying to be there to help bring it to an end.